Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, what is up? You may have heard a couple things about this Chiefs roster, this Chiefs team not being as good as they were in previous Super Bowls. So I did the work for you and took a look at each of the Chiefs Super Bowl teams under Patrick Mahomes and how they stack up. I ranked them all for you. Starting chronologically, let's look at 2019. The 2019 Chiefs were led by an explosive offense, and in the 2019 Super Bowl, they would end up beating the San Francisco 49ers by a score of 31-20. We all know this as the "do we have time to run wasp" game. And the Chiefs' offense just proved to be too much for the 49ers' awesome defense, and they wound up being victorious that day. Taking a look at that 2019 team, I graded each of the position groupings, and I won't go through each of them, but I'm going to talk about just some interesting points about that Super Bowl team from a positional standpoint, and then when we get to the end of the video, I'll tell you my rank for each one. So I graded each position group, gave them a F through A grade, gave them a GPA at the end of that year, and then averaged that number based on a score out of 100, and that's how I ranked them. So notable things about this 2019 Chiefs Super Bowl team was that their starting offensive line was not that good. They were actually quite average. So starting that game for the Chiefs, they had Eric Fisher at left tackle, solid left tackle. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, left guard, solid left guard, short NFL career, but do you blame the man? He had a doctorate, and he went to practice medicine after the NFL season was over. Austin Ryder at center, Wisniewski at right guard, and then none other than the great Mitchell Schwartz at right tackle. So this was not a position group, an offensive line that is as good as the offensive line that the Chiefs currently have, in my opinion. They were able to get the job done, though. Both the wide receiver and tight end position groups for this 2019 were awesome. You know, it was a Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson, Travis Kelce show. Just unbelievable offensive skill position players. And not to mention, they also had Damian Williams, who was a more than solid and capable running back in the backfield for the Chiefs. Defensively for the Chiefs, though, they were not very good at pass rush. They had Frank Clark, and that was pretty much it. Frank Clark, Chris Jones, defensive tackle, and then Tano Passanio was the other guy on the edge. So their defensive end, their pass rushers, did not get a very good grade. And then also their linebacker group did not get a very good grade. That was Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson pretty much running the show for a linebacker group for the Chiefs in 2019. Their cornerbacks were Travarius Ward, Bashaud Breeland, and Kendall Fuller. I gave that group a B. They were okay. As far as Chiefs Super Bowl teams go, this was offense heavy, defense not so well. The defense wasn't as good. After the 2019 season, the Chiefs didn't make a whole lot of changes between 2019 and 2020. They ended up going to the Super Bowl again, facing Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they lost to the Buccaneers by a score of 9-31. Perhaps the worst game Mahomes has ever played. In that game, notable position groupings. Offensive line, obviously, was decimated by injuries. I gave that group an F, and they just could not block anyone to save their lives and help Patrick Mahomes out in that game. Mahomes ran for his life like a chicken with his head cut off all game long, trying to do what he could. Several drop passes by the Chiefs receivers, and lo and behold, it's a blowout victory for Tom Brady. And if Mahomes had won that Super Bowl, we're having an entirely different conversation about who the GOAT is, who the greatest of all time is, because had that gone the other way, Brady has one less, and right now Mahomes has one more. Other notable position groupings, the Chiefs, once again, their receivers, tight end, both get A's. Awesome team in 2020 in terms of the skill position players. The defensive side of the ball still had struggles, though. Their defensive ends were once again led by Clark and Passanio. And Chris Jones, obviously defensive tackle position. Derek Nottie, another defensive tackle. That group, the defensive tackle group, was good on the 2020 Chiefs. But the linebackers and the safeties were a weakness for this team on the defensive side of the ball. Anthony Hitchens, once again, Damian Wilson, once again, as the linebacker group, leading that group. And then the safeties were comprised of Sorensen and Matthew. So the 2019 and 2020 Chiefs were very similar by the time they got to the Super Bowl. However, the injuries along the offensive line totally crippled that unit and crippled the Chiefs' chances of winning that Super Bowl because Mahomes had no time. So after the 2020 season, there's that crazy breakup between Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs. He gets traded to the Dolphins, and the Chiefs retool along the defensive side of the ball. And I just love doing this, going through the history of how the Chiefs have changed and how Mahomes has continued to lead this group to the Super Bowl, over and over and over again. And this is his 5th Super Bowl in, I believe, 6 or 7 years as a starter, 7 years as a starter. And that's just unbelievable that I can give you this depth of content for how the Chiefs have changed year after year when they're in the Super Bowl, because usually you get one shot and then you don't go back for 50 years if you're like the Chiefs were before Patrick Mahomes came to town. So I just appreciate this moment where I can go through these different years and evaluate these different teams that the Chiefs have had, and there's so many of them, so many Super Bowl teams for this group of the Chiefs. But back to our ratings. Chiefs did not make the Super Bowl in 2021. Fast forward to 2022. And the Chiefs are changed from a paradigm standpoint with how they function. They moved from this offensive juggernaut to this more defensive-minded group. Meanwhile, the offense was still performing well in 2022, but the defense was solid. And in 2022, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl by a score of 38-35. In that game, Patrick Mahomes was 21 of 27 for 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 131.8 quarterback rating. Things that had changed between the 2020 Chiefs and the 2022 Chiefs, this is the biggest change in terms of Super Bowl goes out of all of these 5 Super Bowls that Mahomes has been to. They completely retooled their offensive line. They brought in Joe Thuney, drafted Creed Humphrey, drafted Trey Smith. Andrew Wiley was also on the team in a reserve role, and he ended up starting at right tackle in that Super Bowl versus the Eagles. And then Orlando Brown Jr. was brought in via free agency, and this was a pretty good offensive line. I give this offensive line a B+. Other things to note about this Chiefs 2022 Super Bowl team is that their wide receiver group was not that good. They had Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, and Kadarius Toney. Travis Kelce and Noah Gray were holding up the tight end position. Very strong position group. And the Chiefs made improvements, substantial improvements, along the defensive side of the ball with bringing in George Karlaftis, having Trent McDuffie join the fray, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Brian Cook, Leo Chenal. All these players came onto the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs and improved every positional grouping by a significant amount. So in 2020, I had the Chiefs defensive end position with a rating of C, a C grade. In 2022, they had a grade of B. The defensive tackle position in both 2020 and 2022, both were an A. Chris Jones leading the show. That position group is going to get an A as long as Chris Jones is breathing and playing. He's that dominant. The linebacker group had a massive change where they went from a D- in 2020 to a B+ in 2022. The cornerback group went from a B with Ward, Breeland, and Snead in 2020 to an A with Snead and McDuffie running the show in the backfield. The safety group went from a C+ in 2020 to a B+ in 2022 with Justin Reed, Juan Thornhill, and Brian Cook, replacing an aging Tyrann Mathieu and a sketchy Daniel Sorensen. Sorensen, was a splash player for the Chiefs at one time at the safety position, and then as years went on, some of his athleticism dropped, and then he became a liability in the secondary for the Chiefs. So a huge jump on the defensive side of the ball between 2020 and 2022, and that is why the Chiefs are where they are today. It's not 100% because of their offense. It's because they made this decision to switch to a defensive-minded football team where Patrick Mahomes runs the offense, makes up for some weaknesses they might have on the offensive side of the ball, and does just enough to help his defense win football games. And that's been the formula in 2022, the formula in 2023, and it's going to be the formula in 2024 too. And I said years ago, and have continued to repeat, that Mahomes with a top 5 defense is an almost unbeatable team. And what do you know? They're almost to be in a three-peat. And if the Chiefs are able to keep much of their defensive group intact, I think this team, the sky's the limit. I don't think there's anything stopping them from being in contention for a Super Bowl every single year. Moving on to 2023, not a ton of changes between 2022 and 2023. Some of the changes were on the offensive line. The Chiefs brought in Donovan Smith to replace Orlando Brown Jr. Nick Allegretti was playing at left guard. Creed Humphrey stayed at center. Trey Smith stayed at right guard. And then Jawan Taylor was brought in as Wiley hit free agency. So this positional group, I give them the same ranking in 2023 as I do in 2022. I think they're both a B+. Other things to note is that the Chiefs brought in Rashee Rice in 2023, and he immediately upgraded that wide receiver position group from 2022 to 2023. But he was a learning in progress player that year, and how the Super Bowl teams compare with one another are different than how the regular seasons pair with one another. But by the time the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl in 2022 and in 2023, the wide receiver group in 2023 was better than they were in 2022. Also to note is that the Chiefs lost playoff Frank Clark heading into the 2023 season, and it was now Karlaftis, Mike Dana, and Felix Anudike-Uzomah running that defensive end position for the Chiefs. And the linebacker position for the Chiefs improved slightly by bringing in Drew Tranquill from 2022 to 2023. The cornerback room continued to rocket, and the safety room remained mostly unchanged, except for the fact that Thornhill was gone, and Mike Edwards pretty much replaced Thornhill's role. Brian Cook got injured in the playoffs, if you remember, last year, so he was not able to participate in the Super Bowl. Moving on to the 2024 Chiefs. How do they compare with last year? Well, the offensive line position, the running back position, and the wide receiver position, I think, are mostly comparable. Same thing with the tight end position. So offensively, this group is very similar, in my opinion, to last year. Defensively, the Chiefs have remained the same at the defensive tackle position and the cornerback position. I know they lost L'Jarius Sneed, but I believe Trent McDuffie with Jalen Watson and one more year of growth for those two players is giving a level of play similar to what Sneed and McDuffie were offering last year. Now, I'm not saying that Watson is as good as Sneed, no, but I think both those groups deserve an A. They've played that well whenever they've been healthy. The safety position in 2024 has changed slightly with improvements because Brian Cook is healthy. They brought in Hicks, and also Jamari Connor has been helping on the defensive side of the ball as well. So going through these 5 Chiefs Super Bowl teams with Patrick Mahomes, the rankings are as such. Based on my grades, my evaluation. The worst Chiefs Super Bowl team is pretty obvious. The 2020 Kansas City Chiefs, where they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the thing really weighing that group down was the offensive line that year, which graded out as an F. Moving on to the 2019 Chiefs. That's my fourth best Chiefs Super Bowl team. And that team was weighed down by issues on the defensive side of the ball. They're nowhere near as good as they were defensively in 2019 as they were in 2022, 2023, or 2024. The third best Chiefs Super Bowl team is the 2022 Kansas City Chiefs that beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Things to note about that group. They were strong defensively. This was the first year they went to the Super Bowl, and they had this new defensive unit. They weren't very strong at the wide receiver position with Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, Sky Moore, and Kadarius Toney. But Mahomes made it work. And they ended up scoring 38 points in the Super Bowl versus a good defensive Eagles team. The second best Chiefs Super Bowl team were last year's 2023 Kansas City Chiefs, where Patrick Mahomes went 34-46 for 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception against the San Francisco 49ers in a game where the Chiefs won 25-22. And Mahomes made yet another unbelievable late game drive to win the game for the Chiefs. And things to note about that group is that this might have been their best defensive group out of all Mahomes' years. The defensive tackle position, the linebacker position, and the cornerback position all graded out, by my estimation, with an A in 2023. And that leaves me with 2024. The 2024 Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl team is the best Super Bowl team that Patrick Mahomes has ever brought to the Super Bowl. And key differences between 2024 and 2023, because these 2 years were very close, are that, one, Charles Omenihu is healthy in this Super Bowl. Never discount or discredit the value of a good pass rusher and how they can impact the game. All it takes is one play. One play from Charles Omenihu and the game can completely shift. The outcome of the game between the Chiefs and the Eagles can completely shift if Omenihu gets a strip sack, he tips a pass, and it's intercepted. Huge difference for the Chiefs between 2023 and 24. Number two, the Chiefs have made improvements at the wide receiver position collectively. Now, I think Rashee Rice in last year's Super Bowl is a better wide receiver than any wide receiver the Chiefs currently have. But from top to bottom, the Chiefs are better at the wide receiver position than they were last year significantly. DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Worthy, and Hollywood Brown, all additions to the Chiefs wide receiver group that collectively replace and surpass the value that Rashee Rice was bringing to this offense. The Chiefs also improved at safety. So number three, Brian Cook is healthy. He was out last year. And last but not least, I want to talk about the loss of L'Jarius Sneed. Yes, this is a step back. You know, Jalen Watson is not as good as L'Jarius Sneed. But I said before, I don't think that this position group is struggling because they lost Sneed. They're still playing a high level. So I somewhat think that the loss of Sneed is a bit of a wash. For my projection for this game, I just went over all these position groups each year for the Mahomes' 5 Super Bowls. This is the best position group, the best team that Mahomes has brought to the Super Bowl. All the pundits, all the talk leading up to this game has been that the Eagles just have a better roster than the Chiefs. And that may be true. But the Chiefs have their best roster that they've had going into a Super Bowl since Patrick Mahomes has been on the team. That means something. And I'm of the belief, and I would guarantee you that Andy Reid is also of the belief, that good scheme, good execution, good play design can overcome a small change or a small difference in roster talent. So you can get beat on the field because of something happens in a physical nature where someone's faster, stronger. That happens. But if you can execute the X's and O's, and you can do it at a high level, you can win versus almost anyone if you have a roster like the Chiefs have. You can beat anyone if you execute. So this is my message if I'm Andy Reid and the Chiefs coaching staff. If we execute in this game, we will win. And I believe the Chiefs are going to go into the Super Bowl in New Orleans. They're going to execute their game plan. They're going to look like the more well-coached team because they are. And they're going to win this game. They're going to win by a score of 35-28. Chiefs win the Super Bowl, complete the three-peat, and in a moment of glorious karma, Andy Reid beats his former team, who fired him, to complete the three-peat for the Chiefs, and it's going to be friggin' awesome. So that's all I've got for this video. It went a little bit long on time, but I appreciate all y'all for sticking it out. And if you can, hit that like button and subscribe. Maybe it'll give the Chiefs some good luck in this Super Bowl, but I don't think they're going to need it because I think this game is all for the Chiefs, and it's their NFL. It's Patrick Mahomes' NFL, and everyone else is just living in it. So this is Gary signing out. Here's to a good Super Bowl. Y'all have fun. If you enjoy time with your friends and family, I hope you do it safely. And let's go Chiefs. Complete the three-peat. It is there for the taking.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.